Good morning, guys. I'm excited to be here with you. We are in week 10, believe it or not. It's crazy. I was just pulling up my Epic account to get ready for this lesson, and I saw this message. Good morning, Mrs. Bird. The future of the world is in your classroom today. And it just reminded me, guys, how very special you are and how much I miss you. And so I just wanted to tell you, in case you haven't heard it in a while, you're amazing. So let's get to it. We have been learning and reading about change. And so we are actually going to embed a little bit of our social studies curriculum into our reading for the next couple of weeks. And in social studies, we're talking about how changes in technology affect the way that we live, work, and play. And so I found on Epic these really awesome texts that I put into a collection called Changes in Technology. And you can see here that there are 6 different texts. And we're actually going to be learning about changes in communication this week. And next week, we're going to learn about how changes in transportation have affected the way that we live. But I put these other 4 up because I thought they were super interesting and that you might just want to read more um, to learn more. So these are here for you. Don't read this one because we're going to read that next week, but you have the opportunity to read any of these others. So before listening to me, you watched that quick video on timelines. And that's going to be important because timelines are a text feature that authors will use to organize information. These books do not have timelines, which is what we're going to create one to kind of capture the key details and the important parts of the text. Now, this week, Mrs. Bird is not going to read this whole text to you, but I wanted to do enough to kind of just get you started. This text is a level M, guys. I have read through it because I wanted to make sure that this was a text that would be accessible to you. And I also want to remind you of some of the tools of Epic that help readers so that if you get stuck, you can use these tools. And don't forget, too, if you start reading and this is challenging, have mom and dad send me an email. We can get together, read this book together. So, if you take a look at the table of contents, one thing I want to remind you, readers, is this really important part, the glossary. And the glossary is going to have the definitions of some of the words that you may not know. So let's go back here. And one tip for readers is that it might be helpful for you to take a look at some of the words that are going to be in your text before you read. These are some words you'll encounter while reading. So here they are. I am not going to read them to you, but I also love these activities here. How fun would it be to create a code and send a message to a friend? So keep that in mind. So I'm going to go back where I was, and I'm going to go to chapter 1, which is Get the Message. So I can see here this little boy on his phone. And then over here, I can see some what looks like cave paintings. And the author is telling me that this is this word. So don't forget the tools, guys. If you don't know how to pronounce the word, you're not sure what it is, you can click on it. Oh, let's try over here. It doesn't tell us. So that was not helpful. So where should I look? I should look in the glossary if there's not enough context in the text. But over here, let's try one of these words. Communication tells me how to pronounce the word, and then it gives me a definition. So don't forget about these tools, guys. Chapter 1, Get the Message. A text, a smile, a billboard. What do these have in common? They are all ways to share a message. They are forms of communication. That tells me that communication is a way for people to share messages. I want to keep that in mind because we are trying to figure out how people's ability to share messages has changed over time with the advancement of technology. Long ago, most Native Americans did not use written words. They told stories. They carved petroglyphs in rock. Even a drum beat could carry news. Today, we still communicate with words, pictures, and signals. Chapter 1 is just the introduction, where the author is making sure that I understand what communication is, ways that people share messages. Chapter 2. Here I come to my first date. So this is telling me that this is something I'm going to want to record on my timeline. In the 1600s, American colonists used word of mouth to spread news. The town crier shouted news in the street. Written notices were posted in town for all to see. People wrote letters by hand, too. Travelers passed them out. So 1600s. Remember when we talked about how when we see a number, it's our responsibility to stop and think about what is it teaching us? So the author's using numbers here to let us know time. 1600s. Well, we now live in 2020. So 1600s to the 1700s would be 100 years. 1800s would be 200 years. 1900s would be 300 years. And here we are into 2000. So we're talking over 400 years ago. People did send messages, but they did it word of mouth. And there was a person called a town crier. And no, he didn't walk around crying. Let's see what happens when I click on crier. One who calls out orders or announcements, an official who makes public announcements. So it sounds like if there was something important to spread, the town crier would go out and stand, and here he's got his proclamation or whatever it is, and he is going to shout it in the street. And from there, it would pass by word of mouth, which means one person to another to another. So I'm going to go here where I've started my timeline. I've decided to do a horizontal timeline because it's just easier for me. And I'm going to write here that in the 1600s, messages were passed by word of mouth. And I'm going to add a little more information here. A town crier would shout out the message, and then people would share it from person to person. Notice that I didn't just copy the exact text word for word. That's really important, guys, because it shows that I'm taking the time to understand what I'm reading. And I want to make sure that you are too. So we're going to look for those words in the glossary. And we're also going to use the tools of EPIC to help us if we don't know how to pronounce a word or we need to find a definition. And then my last reminder is don't forget to read everything on the page because there's more information there. Did you know before 1440, books were copied by hand? Gosh, can you even imagine that? They took a long time to produce. They were expensive. Only rich people could buy them. But then the printing press changed the world. Books were less expensive to create, and more people could afford them. I wish the author here told us when the printing press was invented, because that definitely would be a way to spread messages in books. Okay, so you are going to turn the page, and you're going to start right here with looks like the 1700s. There's going to be some changes. And so you'll go to your timeline, guys, and you're going to add another line and another date and record the key information. And I want you to keep doing that throughout the text. And when you're done, you'll have a completed timeline that you can share with Mrs. Bird. And then I also want you to think about which change do you think created the most impact on our world? And you're going to post that to Padlet. All right, guys, go ahead. Great job.